أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وأحلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are now at Dars in class number 3 of our discussion. We are looking at the topic of foundational theology, trying to build the religious awareness from the ground up. And we have thus far talked about some fundamental core concepts 2 nights ago. Remember the actual lexical meaning of the word religion, or deen as it is in Arabic, and then the istilahi meaning, the commonly used meaning. And then we broke down into the chain of thought, right? Fikr, mail, amal, khulq, malaka, and dhat, and where religion comes into play of that. And we identified the triggers of our thought is where the deen and religion plays an influential role. That led us to yesterday, talking about the worldview and ideology, and how the worldview affects everything, from our reason to our thought to our comprehension, to our intellect, to our knowledge, to our action. And then, of course, it's an ongoing process. And then last night, at the very end of it, essentially laid out exactly what I'm trying to achieve with all of you in the first 2 weeks of Ramadan. And that is, of the two major worldviews, which one is it, right? Which one should we aspire to? Because remember, one of the purposes from yesterday's talk is the fact that if we want to understand the proper worldview, that worldview affects everything. Okay, think about those who prescribe to a certain worldview, and they have dedicated and devoted their life to that worldview. Everything from what they decide to what they wear to what they know to how they comprehend things to how they handle things, all of that is a reflection of that worldview. So worldview is everything, guys, right? Even an atheist who denies God, they'll live their life based on that worldview and that belief. Okay, so identifying the correct worldview is essential, and that's what I want to lead you towards. The next few days now, we're leaning slowly but surely towards that aha moment, that moment where now, with our logic and intellect, I'm not going to shove ayat down your throat or ahadith down your throat, because you'll understand. Maybe I think tomorrow I have a discussion on epistemology. Why right now at this stage in the development, giving you verses upon verses of scripture is actually counterproductive. But that, inshallah, is tomorrow. Okay, so let's begin now. We'll open up our PowerPoint, inshallah, and we will go from there. Okay, so we have, up until now, we have reached the idea of class number 3, alhamdulillah, and now we understand. Fine, okay, the worldview is important, no problem. Today's discussion is simply to answer one question. I told you guys in the first night, this is going to be a very meticulous, slow process. Okay, we have this eagerness to jump ahead, and I get it, but we're not going to skip steps. Okay, we're not in a rush here. We're going to go very, very slow. and we're going to discuss things that make complete sense to a lot of you right now listening to me. But that's okay. Like I said, going back and revisiting your foundation is critical throughout your life. It can't be one and done at 15, 17, 18. I was sold on religion, Maulana. I don't need, no, not the case. Constantly revisiting our base to make sure no cracks, no breakages, nothing. Today's dars is only about the idea that does religion require at least our investigation? That's my question. Okay. So if religion came to your front door and said, look, I'm selling this is what I'm selling. I'm selling religion. Okay. A sales guy comes to your door and says, Mr. Jafri, I'm selling this religion. Okay. Will you let that person in and allow him to give his presentation? Okay. That's all I want to accomplish today, right? If the question is, and inshallah I'll get to the end of that, if the question is, okay, fine, let's at least investigate the idea of religion, then how do we do it? That's tomorrow's discussion. But today, I have to answer the question up until about 6:45 or so Eastern, the need to investigate religion. Okay, let's get started. Very crucial discussion. Okay. Now, there are factors that instigate the drive to investigate religion. There are factors right now, internal and external, that actually drive us, push us, promote us, motivate us, to investigate religion. Let's understand these factors. Let's accept these factors, so that at least at the end of today's dars, we answer, yes, Asad Bhai, I want to investigate religion. It at least deserves for me to call the sales guy in, let him have a seat on my couch in my living room. You want a cup of tea or a glass of water? Go ahead. But you know what? We're all ears. We're sitting on the couch. Go ahead and give your presentation of religion. To slam the door on the face of religion at the very, very door, at the very beginning, does that make sense or not? Okay? Do we need to do that? That's the question we have. Okay, now, the first point is that we have something called the fitra inside of us. Okay, this innate nature we have inside every single human being, absolute certainties, absolute truths, absolute needs that are consistent throughout every human being exist. Where they exist in a box, a department, a room labeled the fitra. Okay, or the fitrat, as they say, the innate desire or the innate nature of the human being, the innate disposition. For example, examples of the fitrat are the need to feel, the need for food. Okay, hunger is fitri. Nobody taught anybody that. No one had to go to school to feel hungry, right? Thirst is one thing. There's many things, small and large, that exist inside of our innate disposition that is common throughout every single creation. Okay, let's examine 3 of them today, okay, that come with the package of creation. Okay, now the first thing is that we are built and wired with this impulse and need for truth. Okay, so again, let me explain to you a little bit of what the fitrat is. The fitrat is that innate nature that is consistent in every creation. It comes with our creation. It's like a pre-programmed software that's already coming with the phone or the laptop, whatever the case may be. When you go online and you buy a laptop, let's say, they'll tell you what kind of software do you want, blah, 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 and it'll come to your house with that software already pre-installed. Okay, the fitrat is the pre-installed software that's already come with our creation. That can't be denied. Okay, you can argue all you want. You can't deny the fact that every human being feels hungry, every human being feels thirsty. All humans require justice. All humans deem injustice to be wrong. Right? Those things are absolute. The first thing I have is that what also is absolute inside every human being is the need to know. The need to know. The need for the truth. I wonder what's behind this. I have to know what's behind this. Okay, And as I said in the Worldview talk yesterday, that one of the basic questions the Worldview has to answer to be able to at least be considered to be accepted are the basic questions of existence. Okay? Origin, purpose, destination. Where do we come from? What are we doing here? And where are we going? Those have to be answered. Okay? Why? Because innately, we're always going to wonder, what is my destination? You know, people who are adopted, they spend thousands of dollars with, hiring private investigators, right? Sometimes later on in their life. And they'll do that just to find out, I need to find out who my birth parents are. Okay? Birth parents might be long gone. This adopted child might be in their 60s or 70s. It doesn't matter. Why? I have to know where I come from. Where were you born? Where are you from? We meet somebody new. What's your background? Oh, parents were born in India. Parents were born, let's say, for example, I don't know, in Iraq, let's say, right? Where, it's innate now for us to understand what our roots and origin are. Okay? That's our need for truth. That's our need to know. Okay? And religion offers answers to man's basic questions. Okay? Now, I'm not debating right answer or wrong answer. I'm saying you have a question, you have a need, you have an innate dispositional need. Does religion attempt to answer those questions? Yes, it does. It does. It does. It says, if you are wondering about origin, this is what we believe your origin to be. If you want to find out what you're doing in this life, this is what religion offers as a discussion on purpose. If you want to know where you're going, again, religion in general now talks about, where you're headed. Okay? All the major and minor religions, as far as I know, have some form of their understanding of what life at the end will look like, be it in a different world, be it in this world, be it us as different beings, reincarnation, the hereafter, the day of judgment, whatever the case may be. They all have their respective views. Okay? So we have an impulse and a need for truth. Number one. Number two, we have the impulse and need for goodness. Okay? Sometimes what drives people to be good is their need to be good. Now, one might, I'll go back to a talk I had with a young guy, 22 years old, I think, here in Toronto. I would say maybe a week before the month of Ramadan began. Born and raised in a Shia family, but he had some fundamental core questions about God. And they were brilliant questions. They were amazing questions. Okay. And his first question was, or one of them was, that, wait a second, if an atheist does good and a Muslim and a Shia does good, right? Why is there a difference? And my question to him was, what's driving the atheist to do good? He says, we all have a need to do good. We all have this, we get a rush, right? Sometimes when we help out, we volunteer, we do something good for somebody, we help somebody out, open the door for somebody, for example, drop off some iftar, for example, at somebody's house. I don't know, get somebody a gift, right? Put a smile on someone's face. All of that gives us a rush, like a dopamine surge. We feel great about it. It feels good to be good. Where is that coming from? Did someone teach you, make sure you're good? Yeah, they might have, emphasize the idea of doing good, but it's innate. It's innate inside of you. Okay? And religion offers ways by which man can acquire the highest benefit, right? The package that religion offers is that, look, if you do these acts of worship in this religion, you could ultimately now end up in eternity of heaven. If you avoid these things, you could avoid damnation and happiness and suffering. Sorry. Okay. Again, right or wrong, that's not my point. I'll say 1,000 times, guys. My only point today is, does religion at least require a conversation? Are we going to let that poor sales guy into our house say, you know what, go through your spiel? I'm going to sit there and you have piqued my interest. Let's go ahead and let's hear you out. And the third one is something called the God gene. I'll look it up, okay? We have this need to worship something higher than us. Now, how can you prove this? Something is inside of our fitrat. One of the ways that we prove it is that it has occurred throughout history. Okay? Since the dawn of man, as they say, the old philosophers from Aristotle to Socrates to to everybody and anybody, they all Thomas Aquinas and Kant and all these other philosophers, Descartes, they all debate with an overall question of what is real, what is the truth, what is reality, right? Even today now, debates linger on about the reality of God, the reality of free will, the reality of evil. All these things are discussed even today, right? From time now, this idea of serving thy man, being good to your family, right? Upholding the rights and respect of those around you. And what also has been there since day number one, guys, is worship. Okay, yes, everything from I worship the sun to the moon to the stars to water to animals to idols to myself to to another man, that's fine. But one thing that is common throughout all of these, wrong or right, incorrect, illogical, logical, right? Doesn't make, and that's not my point today. My point is, like I said, we're going to go very, very slow. My point is that worship has always been done. You go all the way back to, the caveman era, all the way back to where even they may not be able to read or write, but they'll be able to, create a structure, a statue, and worship that statue. Right? Carve out an idol out of wood and worship that wood. Look at the sun and think, you know what? That's a powerful sun. It illuminates the world. It supplies the world heat. Must be God. Water is a source of life. Water must be God. The cow is sacred. The cow is God. Right? This individual has all the makings of divinity. There's no way that this man is so great that he's a creation, thus he must be either a portion of God or God themselves. That's always happened. Right? And I challenge anyone to debate me to say that worship in its form, don't tell me right or wrong. Worship has always happened, which means that inside the human race, innately, there's a God gene. Okay? There's a need to figure out, is there a higher power? I need to worship something. To the point where, we have reports that say that during the era of ignorance, before the arrival of our Holy Prophet, individuals would worship food. Worship that food and then consume that food right after, because they were hungry after worshiping. We all get hungry at the mosque, right? So this guy would go to his worshiping area. He would worship this, I don't know, this food, whatever it was. And then bachata, he'd get hungry, right? And then he would eat that food, right? It's comical. But that's the extent of the power of the need to worship. It actually now grays out and fades out and blocks your intellect. Okay? So these three are just a glimpse of what is inside every single human being. The need to know, the need to be good, and the need to worship. Okay? And I want you to think long and hard now. All throughout history, it can be debated, and it's factual and historically true that all three existed, throughout mankind's history. Now, one thing I want to mention here, guys, please, these discussions are not easy. This is not easy content. Okay? This is first year, second year Hausa material. Okay? It'll take a little bit of marination, digestion, it has to kind of hazm a little bit, right? As you say in Urdu, let it kind of marinate a little bit, let it kind of sit with you a little bit. It'll start to make sense slowly. The other, that's point number one. So the first factor in the need to investigate religion is our fitrat, our innate nature. Our innate nature commands us to look for the proper path for truth, the proper path for goodness, the proper path for God. And religion offers a path for all three of them. Okay, fine. What else is a factor? The propagation of pious men. Meaning what? A little bit wordy here, I'm sorry, but if you look at the idea that all throughout history, okay, the cream of the crop, you look at the prophets of God, you look at men and women who were godly in society, They were accepted by society now to be the cream of the crop of society. In terms of their etiquette, their justice, their behavior, right? Their principles, their morals. They may not have the biggest house and the best clothes, but they were individuals who were the wisest, people who are the softest of hearts, right? You pick up any story and you see that these were people who always showed the highest level of patience and forbearance, and who were able now to, stick to this propagation even though there was a staunch enmity against them. Okay? So again, the second paragraph there in front of you, historically, some of the greatest and morally sound men would consistently invite their nation to a system of belief. Based on their greatness alone, it is worth investigating to see the validity of their claim and investigation. If you see somebody, for example, you have somebody who you have a lot of respect for, okay? They're a great person. They have a good heart, ethically sound, great akhlaq, just a good human being. The kindest, nicest person you know. That person now is giving you advice. That person now is advising you towards things. That person now is propagating a certain lifestyle. You would at least stop to think, okay, let me hear this man out or this woman out, because obviously what they're doing is working. You see a person who's lost 40 pounds, let's say, and they have shed 10 years off their life. They come to you with a diet plan, you're going to listen, because they are a walking, talking proof that what they did worked for them, right? Same idea. We all want to travel towards truth, goodness, and God. And here you have individuals, historically now, time and time again through every society, who are the encompassing manifestation of all three of these. There's truth in their message, there's goodness in them, and they, of course, promote the idea of God. Again, you would think, at least let me hear them out. And that's all I want to accomplish today, is are you willing to hear them out? Okay? That's number 2. Number 3, the probability factor. Okay? Let's understand this for a moment. And again, hopefully, inshallah, you're taking notes and you're with me, inshallah. It's a quiet area. Hopefully the kids are allowing you to at least listen to a little bit. But please, this is a very, very important discussion. Okay? There is something called probability, ihtimal. Okay? And return on probability. Mizan-e-ihtimal. Weighing, mizan in Farsi and Arabic means scale, right? Like I think in Farsi and Urdu they use tarazu as well, right? It's funny. I asked one time. I asked somebody, an elder in my community. I said, how do you say scale in Urdu? Because I thought, I was trying to understand, is it the same word in Farsi? They're like, they thought long and hard. They said, Wazn karne wale machine. I said, oh, that's a unique name. And I didn't think that was right. So I asked somebody else who was a poet and kind of well known in Farsi and very, sort of gehri Urdu. They said, beta hum bhi tarazu bolte hain. I said, okay, tarazu. So tarazu is a scale. Mizan also is, right? The same idea. It's a scale in Farsi and Arabic as well. So weighing the weight of the probability, and you'll understand what I mean. Soon. I have 10 minutes left. I want to go very, very quickly. So the first thing is, let me actually, before that, let me set up the example. Okay. So I want you to imagine that Beit al-Asr is having a raffle, or some fundraising, let's say, for example. Okay, so they decide to have a raffle. Now, don't tell me that raffles are haram, halal, and what this one just says and that one. This is not a fiqh class, please. This just the example, okay? So I want you to imagine that they announce a raffle, let's say, for example, And the prize is a pair of Air Jordans, okay? They're a very famous basketball shoe worn by the greatest player of all time. Don't debate me on that. He is the GOAT, okay? Pair of Air Jordans, okay? And the price of them is $10 a ticket. Easily, a good, decent pair of Jordans might be a couple of $100. You could have it if your ticket is pulled out for $10. Would you buy a ticket? Yeah, I would buy a ticket. It's going to a good cause. It's a great prize, right? Nominal price, I think, relatively speaking, for a ticket, I might even buy 4 or 5 tickets. I might even spend $60, $70 and increase my chances to buy a shoe that will be at least triple that amount. Okay, great. Let's go one notch higher. What if they're raffling courtside 76ers tickets? Okay, best in the East right now, right? Joel Embiid is having MVP type season, right? You're there on courtside. You're even watching your boy Ben Simmons shoot up a 3 here and there, right? It's a miracle. You got courtside seats now. Beit Al-Asr now announced that we have courtside seats for the Philadelphia 76ers basketball game. Okay, they're playing the Nets. Forget Toronto. They're playing the Nets. Great game. Couple of 2 heavyweights in the East. You can sit there at courtside, smell the sweat. That's how close you'll be from the thing, from the players. And the price is only $20 a ticket. Obviously, we're talking about easily now a couple of hundred, if not $1,000 easily for those seats per seat. It could be yours for $20 a ticket. Would you buy a ticket if you are a great sports fan? I know a lot of my New Jersey guys are. You would probably, again, buy easily, maybe even 6 or 7 tickets. Going to a good cause, I might end up courtside watching my favorite team. Okay. Let's go one notch higher, the Arba'in walk. Okay. All expense paid, right? From New York, from Newark to back to New York. Okay. Ground package, flight, the whole 9, Arba'in walk. Okay. Your chance to walk from Najaf to Karbala. Never done it before, first time doing it, $50, $25 a ticket, right? Obviously, again, we're looking at a package that is thousands of dollars in its worth, okay? Now you'll say, oh, it depends on how many, let's not get into logistics. Would you buy a ticket? Yes, I would. I would buy a ticket. Okay? All of the necessary now components are pushing me towards buying a ticket. Let's go one notch higher. Hajj. Okay, we have in our fiqh that if somebody is going to gift you money for Hajj, if someone comes to your front door and says, look, Mutahhar Bhai, this is an envelope for you, okay, with your name on it, and there's enough money in here for Hajj, and the niyat and the intention of the one who gave this envelope was that I want Mutahhar Bhai to go for Hajj, then it becomes wajib for Mutahhar Bhai to go for Hajj. Okay, so now it's, instead of one guy, it's the entire of Beit Al-Asr saying, look, we have money set aside for someone now to become a Haji this year. Okay, and for those who have never been to Hajj, and the idea of me going for Hajj, it's so expensive now, might be very difficult, but along comes this raffle. Would you be able to pay $50 a ticket for it? Look at where we're going, right? From a pair of basketball shoes all the way now to doing tawaf of the Bayt of Allah, visiting the birthplace of Amir al-Mu'mineen, going to Mecca, going to Medina, 4 different imams, 6 different ma'sooms you can do ziyarat of in Medina alone, if you include Sayyidah Fatima, right? Trip of a lifetime. There are some of you who have gone for Hajj and your life has gone 180 after Hajj. All that for $50. A package that could easily be 10,000 US dollars. You would buy maybe even 10 tickets. I would spend $500, again, going to a good cause, and for a chance now for me to have an all expense paid trip to Hajj. I would do it. Can we go higher than that? Yes, we can. We can go higher than that. What about eternity of bliss and contentment? What if Beit Al-Asr is offering you eternity of bliss and contentment? Subhanallah. I mean, where are shoes? Where are basketball games? Where even is the Arba'in walk? Where is this idea of eternity? Hum fiha khalidun, forever and ever and ever. In what? Not in any state. In bliss and contentment. In sukoon, in serenity. Would you invest in that is the question. Would you buy a ticket for that? Would you stop and for a moment think, wow, if that's what you're offering, that's actually very enticing. Is that not what some religions, if not all of them, present as the price? Sure they do. Sure they do. Is there a price that you are willing not to pay for this return on probability? Okay. So let me say this one statement now. As the return on probability increases in value, look at my chart now. As the Mizan-e-Ihtimal increases from a pair of basketball shoes all the way to eternity, from a couple of tickets to go see a 3-hour game to now going to Hajj, labbaik Allahumma labbaik. As that increases, the desire to investigate the probability also increases. All right. So the chart on your left now, okay, the price now increases, and you're willing to pay the price as it increases. You may not pay $50 a ticket for a pair of Jordans, but you definitely will pay $50 for Hajj. So as that increases, as the value increases on the Mizan-e-Ihtimal, the desire to investigate the ihtimal now increases. So yeah, I'll buy a ticket. Yes, let's at least investigate. So the salesman now comes to your door and says, Mr. Jafri, I am selling you eternity of bliss and comfort. All you need to do is do these acts of worship. You would stop and think, well, let's consider it. Let's consider it. Is it worth considering? And I don't mean to inject in and interfere in your process of thought, but I would probably be shocked if anybody right now listening to me would say, yeah, no, I really wouldn't invest in anything if you're offering me an eternity of bliss. Give me those courtside seats and we're happy. Forget this bliss and contentment. I said, no, I don't think anybody. I think everybody would say, wow, eternity of being happy, in the good place, in heaven, and whatever you want to call it. Would you at least investigate? Big sign that says Hajj 2022, let's say, for example, could be yours for $50. You would stop, at least read the poster, right? The subject of the email says Arba'in walk for $25, all expense paid. You're like, huh? You would click on the link. Would you click on the link that says eternity of bliss and contentment? Would you stop and read the poster that says you can be eternally bliss and happy? I would assume the answer to that would be yes. Okay. Because the mizan now increases, and so the desire to investigate the ihtimal also increases. And to answer our first question, would we let the sales guy in selling religion? Yes, we would. We would. Come in. We're going to sit down. You have your half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever you need. Begin your spiel. Begin your sell. If you're offering what I think you're offering, then I would be a fool to not stop and at least hear you out. Let's hear religion out. That's all I'm asking my young guys today. Give it a shot. Give it a chance. What do you have to lose? Tell me. Let's say, for example, and I'll end with this and then the questions. Let's say, for example, that you give your whole life for religion, and then you end up in your grave and the angels come and say, ha, 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 gotcha. There's no religion. Ha, ha, ha. Prank on you, blah, blah, blah. You're like, oh my God. What did you lose? What did you gain? Think about that person. Then think about that person who believes in this world that religion is a fraud, it's a ploy, it's a game, it's a trick, it's a prank. There's no such thing. This world is the end, is the last world. When I end up in my grave, I'll be nothing but powder, and that's it. I'll be over. He gets to the grave, all of a sudden now the angels arrive saying, let's see your book of deeds. He's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Which one is in the better spot? Tell me. Which one is in the better spot? The guy who lives his whole life thinking, yes, there's religion, afterlife, he was good, he sacrificed those things that were satanic, he was good to his family, raised his kids very well, great spouse to his spouse, blah, blah, blah. At the end, haha, gotcha. Like, okay, I didn't lose as much. As opposed to a person now who convinced himself in his warped logic that none of this now makes sense. I'm just, this is the 65 years on life and that's it. And then he is told otherwise in the grave. You can't go back. Give me one more day, God. God says, no, those days are over, my man. I gave you decades and decades of days. So my sisters and my brothers, as I end this class, as the return on probability increases, the desire to investigate the probability also increases. So yes, absolutely, okay? Religion requires at least our attention, at least our investigation. Give it a shot. Now, if we say, yes, Asad Bhai, I'm ready to hear this guy out, how do we approach religion? How do we understand it? How do we learn it? Okay, what's the first step? That, inshallah, is tomorrow. Okay, so let's open up our questions, inshallah, and then we will go from there.
Assalamu alaikum, Maulana.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How are you?
Maulana, I'm on my phone, so I will be on audio.
No
and
problem.
Read these questions, inshallah.
Inshallah, no problem.
So thank you for the great lecture. Once again, it's nicely building up beautifully.
Yes, it is.
Yes, alhamdulillah. So this question is from a youth, Maulana, and the question is, how do we invest in the eternity of bliss and contentment?
How do we, investigate?
Invest.
Yes, tomorrow.
That's tomorrow coming up?
That's tomorrow coming up. So
okay.
Remember, all I'm after today is for you to say, okay, I want to invest. Where do I start? That's tomorrow. The only question I want to answer was, are you willing to invest and investigate in this eternity of bliss? Yes, I am. Then come with me tomorrow.
Perfect. Okay, inshallah. So next question I have here is that other religions also promise an eternity of bliss and contentment.
Yeah.
So how to discern which one is the right one?
Right. Again, tomorrow. Yeah.
Tomorrow, okay.
I'll be answered tomorrow and the next day. Absolutely. Tomorrow,
right.
Next day. We're building towards that. Right now, like I said, I haven't mentioned Islam anywhere in my slides, or Hinduism or Christianity. I'm not talking about a specific religion. Right now, I'm not Muslim, you're not Muslim. We're just talking about religion in general. Then when we get to God, which is maybe halfway through the lectures, then we'll start to kind of funnel down. Right now, it's the idea of religion in general. Let's keep it very general.
Okay, perfect. The next question we have here is, what is tawakkul?
So it's a little bit not related. That's okay though. Tawakkul.
Yes, tawakkul. Yes.
Tawakkul. Yeah, tawakkul is the idea of the reliance on God. And what that means is, the Prophet would say that, rely on God, but tie your camel. Right? Meaning what? That reliance on God doesn't mean that you just don't do anything. You sit on the musalla, ya raziqo, ya raziqo, ya raziqo, and then the money will slowly appear from the trees and fall at your doorstep, and voila. No, of course not. Reliance on Allah is the acceptance of whatever outcome comes your way. So you've done everything in your power. You have done your best. Like there are some people I know, they've gone through this epiphany, okay? That, I've been trying to get my foot in the door in this career for easily 10 years. And every door that I approach slams in my face. I'm starting to think that God's steering me towards a different career. And 10 years after that, they're right now in a totally different field, and they're happy and they're content, to the point where they say, had I entered that first career, I would have been miserable. So the idea is that, I'm doing my wazifa, my responsibility, but then I rely on whatever God's outcome comes. Sometimes we ask Allah for a dua, but we attach our own conditions. Allah, I want a child by next April. Allah, I want a summer wedding. Allah, I want to go to Hajj in when it's a little bit, cooler, let's say, for example. All those things are not in your control. You ask Allah, you pray to Allah, you do everything you can. The rest is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Allah, I need a job. I'm out there, as you guys say, I'm down in the pavement. I'm giving you my resumes. I am working day in and day out to find a job. I'm doing my part, and I'm heavily relying on God doing His part. So it doesn't mean that you leave your camel on the your horse on the outside, go inside for a cup of coffee, and assume that God will look after your camel. No, rely on God, but tie your camel. Meaning what? Do your part.
Your part.
Tie the camel. Be smart about it, right?
Sure.
If after everything you've done, still it's not happening, then at that moment, then you submit. Imam Ali has a beautiful statement, and I want all of my viewers to understand this statement. He says, I found God in the breaking of my intentions. Oh my God. I intended to do something, it didn't happen. I tried to avoid something, it happened, right? I did my level best. Both of them broke. I found God in that.
Subhanallah.
Meaning that what God says, look, you're going this way, I'm going to pick you up and place you this way. Okay? In the breaking of my intentions, I found Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning I thought this was my path, the path went this way. It's almost as if Imam is saying, okay, God, I hear you, fine. I'll accept this way. I did everything I can for this way, not going to happen. I avoided, let's say, for example, to have a child. We did everything we could to make sure, don't get pregnant. The test comes out positive. You're like, what? And then many times I've seen that child ends up being a solution, an avenue of risk, an avenue of tawfiq, so many more things. How many times have I heard couples tell me, you know what, we weren't planning on the third one. He came, but he's been a joy. She's been a walking angel for us. That's tawakkul. We tried our best, but Allah said, I have a better plan for you. So we rely on that plan, and we submit to that plan, inshallah.
That's great, Maulana. Thank you so much. That was great. Now I have another question here, which is, I think, the last question for the day.
Sure.
And it's a great question, I think. Question is, Maulana, isn't the probability factor driving the mindset of worship being like that of a businessman driven by profit?
Okay, great question. Beautiful question.
Yeah.
And yes, it is, and that's okay. It's okay. Because there are levels to worship. And I'll give you a very simple example. Oh, it's such a great question. It's such a great, you tell your son, your 6-year-old son, okay, if you clean your room, I'll give you a candy. Okay?
Yeah.
And he says, okay, perfect. Oh my God. Right? Or in my Zamana, candy worked. Nowadays, if you clean your room, I'll give you half an hour screen time. Okay? That's worth more than a candy. So he cleans the room, spotless. Baba, I'm done. Here's your half an hour. I'll tell you what to watch, half an hour. Okay? And the more I do it, the more he'll clean his room. Eventually, however, he'll understand that the screen time is gone, and what is more important is to have a clean room. But that understanding could not have happened unless I dangled the screen in front of him. Okay? God knows that man needs to be motivated. And sometimes our motivation is not just in the fact because it's the right thing to do. We are materialistic beings driven by materialism sometimes. We need to find out how does this benefit me? So that's why, Imam Ali has in Nahj al-Balagha 3 levels of the worshipper: the tajir, the abd, the ahrar, right? The business person, the slave, and the free individual. The businessman is exactly what this question is asking. I'm selling you my worship, God. I want heaven in return. You're the buyer, I'm the seller. That's one level of worship. He calls it worship. The second level, he says, is that of the abd. The slave's only purposes don't upset the master. If the master is upset, you're in trouble. So make sure I'm worshiping God to make sure, God, you're not upset with me. If you're upset with me, you'll put me in the hellfire. So the first one is that I'm trying to worship God for the pleasure of heaven. The second one is I'm trying to avoid the hellfire. Imam Ali says the highest level is that of the ahrar. Ahrar comes from hur in Arabic. Hur, as many of you know, my azadars, hur means free. A person is free of the desire of heaven and the fear of hell. He worships Allah because he's worthy of worship. But that does not come right away. That comes after a while when you have to have something that's enticing you. So yes, absolutely. I'm telling you that to enter the door of religion, sometimes we have to be enticed. Okay? But the hope of God is that once you see the beauty of the religion, right? That's far greater than anything else that you can offer me. دعائكم of Imam Ali, sorry, my last point here. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك. Suppose, دعائكم every single Thursday, right? Suppose, Allah, I can endure your punishments, your adab. Squeeze my grave, lash me, I'll endure all of that. فكيف أصبر على فراقك. How do you expect me to endure separation from you? Separation from you for Imam Ali was his hell. The closer he was to Allah, that's his heaven. The further he away, that was hellfire. Forget the castles and the houris and the food and the rivers and the gardens. That's all, baat ki baat. What really is heaven for me is qurbat ilahi. That doesn't come right away. Surah Waqi'ah, talk specifically about, the favors of heaven. Read that chapter. Talks about reclining chairs, young men serving you, asking you what do you want to drink, giving you the best of meats, feeding you the best of fruit, right? Fanning you, the best of breezes. Those are all dunyai things you would think. But again, Allah now knows that the being has to be enticed. So yes, absolutely. The entry into religion is absolutely a profit-based enticement. Eventually, however, you'll see the beauty of it way beyond the profit, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Maulana. That was a great question, by the way.
Great question.
Yeah, Maulana, thank you so much. This topic is such an important topic, and thank you for explaining it so well. We really appreciate you doing this live. I would also like to remind all our viewers that if you can please invite other family members and friends, because this is such an important topic and it's going so well, alhamdulillah. So please invite them. You can send a link or WhatsApp, and please tell them to join these sessions every night at 6:15. Inshallah. Thank you, Maulana. I'll see you 6:15 tomorrow.